Greetings, all you unintentionally self-aware holograms out there, and welcome to The Inner Four Lights, a Star Trek Picard watch. My name is Fletcher. About to say hello is Data.
Greetings.
In today's very special preseason episode, we're going to recap, discuss, and possibly rate Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 6, Episode 12, Ship in a Bottle. Alternate title, and really bear with me here, The Date Tricks.
Huh. Okay. I mean, it would have been much easier to go for like a Sherlock Holmes pun. So I guess respect for going in a very different direction.
I wanted to call it a party for Moriarty, but that didn't quite work.
That's silly. Are you going to explain why we're doing this?
Yes.
Episode?
So there's another podcast called the It's Got Star Trek podcast. And I was researching other Star Trek podcasts the other day ahead of eventually launching our stuff onto other platforms. Just seeing what's popular out there. And I saw that this was like on Sunday. And I saw that their episode they were going to release the next day was the episode of Undeclared Bajor, our Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. We were putting out the same episode on the same day. And the shtick of this podcast, the It's Got Star Trek podcast, is that all the pre-New Era shows, so like everything up through Enterprise, basically every week they randomly choose an episode and review it. I mean, they claim they have an algorithm that chooses the episodes for them. So I just thought it was interesting. I did the math. This is like a pool of like 700 episodes they're starting with.
Yeah.
And they just happened on this day I was looking to be doing the exact same one we were doing. And I thought that was a good opportunity for a little math lesson too, a little numerical reasoning lesson. Because you hear that and you're like, oh my gosh, that's going to be like a 1 in a million chance. Although when you think about it, assuming that they're pulling from the full pool, which they're not, they're up to almost like 200 episodes by now. But assuming they were pulling from that like full 700 something episode pool, that would still just be a 1 in 700 chance that any one of their episodes would be released at the same time one of ours is.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. And then, of course, you have to think, what are the odds of it ever happening over the life of our entire Deep Space Nine podcast? Which Deep Space Nine has like 174 episodes or something like that. And so, of course, if you want to calculate the odds of it happening at least once, you calculate the odds of it happening 0 times and then subtract that from 1. The odds of it happening 0 times are, let's say there's a pool of 700 episodes. It would be 699 over 700 to the power of however many episodes we were doing, about 174. That comes out to about 21% or something like that when you do that math. So it's more unlikely than likely, but it's not like astronomically unlikely. In fact, it's not that amazing that it happened.
Okay.
And in fact, when you consider, not only is there our podcast, I know of at least 2 or 3 other Deep Space Nine podcasts that are going on right now. I've seen like at least one Voyager podcast going on right now. Odds are it would happen to them eventually. So it's not like a huge, like 1 in a million thing that you might think it is.
Okay.
Just a little, I thought I'd bring that up because I feel like people tend to have very poor numerical reasoning skills and to focus on events that they find really interesting and think they must be super rare and there's some conspiracy behind it or something, but it's just a cool little fluke.
This has been the mathematics portion of the show.
Yeah. You're going to listen to me give a math lesson, okay? And I wrote some Python code to simulate it in more detail because also, when they don't just do a random episode. If they do an episode, they take it out of their pool, right?
Right.
They don't do it twice. So I wrote a little Python code to kind of like simulate this whole thing. and about like 20%, it was like between 21 and 22% of the simulations I ran, they wound up doing an episode at the same time as us. So that kind of backs up my little back of the envelope calculation I did earlier. So
I spent a lot of that trying to figure out how this related to the question I asked that I thought you were answering.
No, I'm getting there.
Before I figured out that it didn't seem to. So
no, I'm getting there. Okay. Anyway.
Okay.
It was interesting to me at the time. This was a little adventure I went on of mathematical puzzling things out. But
math adventures always good.
I thought it would be kind of fun and cheeky if we did the same episode they're doing. Well, it'll be this week by the time you're listening. Next week when we're recording, which they've already announced is Next Generation episode 612, Ship in a Bottle, because they are also pausing to do a Star Trek Picard review series. And apparently, I've not seen trailers of Star Trek Picard, but apparently the trailers hint that this episode will be relevant to the new season. So I don't know if you've seen...
No, I haven't watched any trailers or anything. I like to remain unspoiled.
Yeah, that's kind of
things.
Weirdly, Paramount, like I've complained about this before, like it's weird that Paramount Plus like has showed me like 5 million Criminal Minds and Mayor of Kingstown trailers, but no Star Trek Picard trailers, even though all I watch on Paramount Plus is Star Trek.
Well, that's probably the thing. They're like, we already know this person's going to watch it. Let's advertise other things that they might not watch.
That's true. They're playing it smart. There's like, this guy's already in for Star Trek Picard. Let's not waste our one required commercial for the commercial-free account.
I have seen lots of Mayor of Kingstown commercials, though.
Yeah. And, of course, our best wishes to Jeremy Renner as he recovers from his accident. So, yeah, I thought not only would it be fun and cheeky to copy them, but actually it sounds kind of like a good thing to do. A little, like, pre-pilot or a pre-season lead-in.
Watch it have nothing to do with with Picard, but
the only other thing I've seen relevant to the new season, other than of course the whole cast of Next Gen is apparently coming back, but I have seen YouTube videos. I've not seen the videos, but I've seen like thumbnails for YouTube videos saying like new season of Picard rumored to be like have a Matrix twist or something like that.
Oh. Okay.
So we'll see.
Turns out that they've all been in the Matrix since this episode.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. But anyway, I will go ahead and say this is a full spoiler review. And I mean, I don't anticipate it, but just all spoilers for Next Gen are on the table, I say. Next Gen is a kind of a hard show to spoil, though. Like, there's not that many.
There's not a continuing story, really.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few, like, Tasha Yar and what eventually happens to Wesley and stuff like that. But
man, we still don't know what happens to Wesley. I mean, I saw Picard season 2. I don't know what the hell is going on with that dude.
Yeah, did he go back in time?
Apparently.
Well, we'll discuss that if it's ever brought up in the new Picard season. Although I would find it immensely amusing and satisfying if the whole cast of Next Gen was back, except for Wesley.
That seems like the kind of thing they might do.
But anyway, this episode of Star Trek Next Generation originally aired January 25th, 1993. It was the first Next Gen episode after Deep Space Nine started.
Yep.
And it aired the day after the Deep Space Nine episode Babel.
Oh, no O'Brien in this one.
Nope. And there was a definite moment where we would have normally seen O'Brien too. It was written by Renee Echevarria.
That's as good an attempt as I've ever had.
I always, I think people deserve to have their names pronounced correctly, but we don't have them here to ask, so.
Right.
And directed by Alexander Singer.
Related to Bryan Singer?
I do not know.
Probably not. I don't know why that just popped into my head like that.
Possibly related to Bryan Singer. Who knows?
It's a mystery.
Okay, so in this episode summary. In the parlor of 221B Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes, played by Data, and Dr. Watson, played by Geordie LaForge, question the brother of a recently deceased man, an apparent suicide. Holmes coolly disguises his suspicions as he methodically lays out his analysis of the evidence, leading to the conclusion that the suicide was staged by a left-handed person. Holmes artfully builds to the moment where he springs his trap, tossing the brother a box of matches. But the brother catches it in the wrong hand. Annoyed, Data and Geordie in the holodeck program and call in Barclay for repairs.
Yeah, obviously, this couldn't have been like an issue that Data had with like the logic that he was building this case. It must be the holodeck malfunctioning.
Yeah, I don't know. They might have like played this mystery before or something, or I couldn't find any evidence that it was based on a real Sherlock Holmes mystery.
I don't recall one that is anything like that, and I've read all the official Sherlock Holmes stuff a lot of times.
So this could be one of his, Picard's or not Data's new programs that he made after he was just like, too bored with all the real Sherlock Holmes mysteries.
Yeah.
But why is Barclay allowed anywhere near the holodecks? This is what concerns me.
Barclay is the guy that they call to do the grunt work that no one else cares to do.
I mean, this guy has had so many issues with these holodecks.
You're not wrong. Like, when we're introduced to him, it's like he's got this like holodeck addiction. So it does seem like a bad plan.
Didn't he get super intelligent one time and then use the holodeck to take over the Enterprise?
Yeah, that totally happened. So I don't know if it. Hold on, did it happen yet? Maybe that's the question. That was a season 4 episode. So yep.
But as Barclay tinkers with the holodeck, he accidentally activates the rogue sentient Moriarty program.
Well, I mean, he intentionally activates the program. It's just no one told him that there was like a bad Moriarty. Don't open that one.
And he tries to play it off later. Like, oh, I don't know what happened. Like, Moriarty showed up.
The program's in protected memory, and I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But it seems like the kind of thing that maybe you should question. And
just then, open all the files in the protected memory. I don't see why not.
And then, so, Moriarty shows up, and he's like, "Are you right or left-handed?" And he tells him, and he throws him a thing. He's like, nothing wrong with this program. Guess I'll turn it off. I'm like, are you really going to go through every single one and just be like, hey, are you right? Like that. Also, they never told him that there was a right-left-handed situation going on. They just said that weird stuff was happening with the program.
Oh, that's true. Did they maybe submit a work request off screen or something?
We see them in real time call him and leave and meet him outside. So I don't think there was time for that.
I don't know. Maybe this is a known issue or something.
Yeah, maybe.
But I just later when he goes to engineering, he's like, I just wasn't doing anything. I was just trying to fix the holodeck, and then suddenly Moriarty showed up. I didn't open any secured files. But yeah, so Moriarty complains that he's been stuck in the computer for years, experiencing time pass, while apparently no progress has been made to get him out of his holodeck-bound existence. Which,
to be fair, seems to be 100% accurate.
Yes, absolutely.
He's like, they've just forgotten me and haven't done anything. And
no, they have.
That's exactly what happened. They forgot him and didn't do anything.
Meanwhile, in engineering, Data and Geordie prepare for a rare celestial event, the colliding of two gas giants to form a new star. Barclay comes in and reports the Moriarty situation. Barclay and Data bring Captain Picard to the holodeck, where Picard tries to placate Moriarty with a bunch of dubious stories of Starfleet's top scientists working on the situation, which, yeah, sure.
We're totally, doing stuff.
Yeah, all the smartest people in Starfleet have been working on this around the clock for the last 4 years. Moriarty proposes that perhaps he can somehow will himself into normal existence. Picard and Data try to dissuade him, but much to their amazement, Moriarty steps right off the holodeck. So I feel like at this point, we need to keep meticulous track of what is actually happening in the story.
Yeah, apparently, like it says in the wiki that they had issues and like keeping track of like the nested layers of
Uh-huh.
reality going on here, and so what does it say? Hold on. Yeah, it says that the nested universes confused even the staff, who ended up drawing diagrams during break sessions to keep track of them.
Well, see, the problem is sometimes the real world. There are scenes that are in the real world.
There's not
But
many of them. In fact, I'm not
yeah,
sure that there's actually any until Moriarty gets control of the ship, and then we
right.
see him talking to Riker.
No, that I think that's definitely the first time we see the real world. But yeah, we'll get to that, I guess. So they take Moriarty to sick bay, which is a fake holographic sick bay, where Dr. Crusher, who is a fake holographic Dr. Crusher, examines him and declares him to be real, which I guess from her perspective he is.
Yeah, I guess that is the question. It's like, would fake holographic scanner read hologram, or would it read real? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just not go too crazy. So Moriarty, apparently real, according to some of the characters, as they seem to believe, immediately begins making excited plans for his new adventures in this amazing futuristic world he's entered, he claims. But Moriarty, of course, knows that he's not in the real world. This is all a ruse concocted by him somehow. And Moriarty crosses his heart that he won't be evil anymore.
Yep. He's like, no, I don't want to be a criminal. I'm going to leave my past on the shelf, as it were.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This, very nice pun.
Yeah.
But he desires company, specifically the Countess Regina Bartholomew, a fellow holodeck character. Which, if she's a countess, doesn't that mean she's married?
I don't know.
Maybe she's a widow.
I mean,
Whatever.
Yeah, she could be a widow. But what I think is the bigger issue here is that, like, we saw him be created in the previous episode. We saw him get shoved into memory. Apparently, since then, they've created this other person, this countess, and like retroactively written into his protected program that he was in love with her, which really should make him question some of the things that he's claiming about his own sentience. If they can just be like, yeah, you are in love with her. And then suddenly he's like, I love her so much.
Well, so why do you say it had to be after he was in the protected memory?
Because
they created her.
Back in the elementary My Dear Data, we see them for the first time attempt a Sherlock Holmes story. We see LaForge get frustrated because Data already knows all the Sherlock Holmes stories. They make the request to create somebody who can defeat Data, and then within the confines of that episode, he like kidnaps Pulaski. They have the whole thing, and then at the end they put him into protected memory. There's no she is never created at any point during that episode, nor is anything created like he says that like she was made to be his true love or whatever, but there's no point during that episode where they would have done that.
Yeah.
And we certainly didn't see them do that.
I mean, maybe she was created before that, and just like his knowledge of her is part of his programming. Even if there was never any actual simulation of her.
We saw them take like their first experience with Sherlock Holmes was in the same episode. Like Jordy's like, hey, let's do the Sherlock Holmes thing. So I don't know where she would have been created like beforehand.
Like maybe she was just in the pre-existing Sherlock Holmes like standard character set or something.
I'm not sure that that she appears in any Sherlock Holmes stories. So I don't know.
I mean, maybe she's like a new character invented for like the Sherlock Holmes holodeck box set or something. I don't know. But whatever, he knows her somehow and he's in love with her.
Yep.
Maybe he's been somehow peeping on her from his protected memory or something. I don't know. So he proposes to bring her to life in a similar way he was, then bringing her into the real world to be his companion. So I guess they want them to say, like, make Countess Regina Bartholomew capable of defeating Data or something like that.
Something. Yeah. She doesn't seem that bright, so...
Yeah. She seems pleasant enough, but...
I mean, yeah. for sure pleasant enough. Yeah, okay, so there's no reference to Regina Bartholomew outside of this episode, except apparently there's an American lawyer, politician, and mother of 3 from Louisiana named Regina Bartholomew.
Oh. Hi, if you're listening.
Yeah.
She might really love this episode and, like,
could be.
Listen to every podcast that comes out about it. If so, welcome. Check out our Deep Space Nine reviews. So Picard opposes this whole idea due to its obvious ethical implications.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Just despite the fact that you're creating someone who we don't know if she can leave the holodeck, because we don't know how Moriarty left the holodeck, which is Picard's main point, which is completely reasonable. It's like, should we really just go around creating life willy-nilly and like just for the hell of it?
I mean, people do it all the time, but, you know, as Data pointed out that one time when he was trying to make a child.
That's true, but I think there's also a difference between, like, creating a child that you then have responsibility for and creating a full-grown adult who you have no responsibility for.
Well, like, you know, taking a person who was a, like, fictional side character in a short story and endowing them with, like, self-awareness.
Yeah.
Seems something's a little off. Like, much about this episode reminds me of a lot of stuff that happens in Rick and Morty. Have you seen the one with the butter robot?
No.
Where Rick is like, nobody will pass him the butter, so he makes this little robot. And the robot's like, what is my purpose? And he's like, pass me the butter. And then the robot passes him the butter, and he's like, what is my purpose? And Rick's like, you pass butter. And the robot, like, looks at his hands, and he's like, oh my god. And Rick's like, yeah, welcome to the universe, or whatever.
Wow, okay.
So, this also reminds me of the episode where aliens kidnap Rick and trap him in a holodeck to try to trick him into giving them his formula for spaceship fuel or something. And then they have this elaborate system of nested, like, virtual realities to, like, trick him.
Mm-hmm.
So the crew begin their... So, again, the fake hologram crew begins their observations of the planetary collision, which is a fake hologram planetary collision.
Yep.
But suddenly they find themselves without command functions, apparently locked out of the computer by Moriarty. And they're just like, I don't know how you would be able to do it, but I guess he did it.
Yep. It's like, how'd he do it? Oh, but
let's just take it for granted that he did it.
Yep.
Moriarty announces that he is holding the Enterprise hostage, and if they want to move the Enterprise to a safe distance before the new star ignites, they will need to agree to his demands to bring the Countess to life. Which, once again, this whole situation is totally simulated. It's all a ruse.
Apparently, if you pay attention, there is they have a very subtle tell about the hologram stuff, because they don't show external shots of the Enterprise like they usually do, like at breaks and stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Between the moment where they get stuck in there and just before Moriarty appearing on to, like, Riker and co on the bridge, they don't do any of the exterior shots.
Oh, that is pretty cool. Data, Barclay, and Geordi get to work brainstorming a solution. Data suggests using the transporter to somehow beam the Countess off the holodeck. Then Picard takes Geordi, who we must remember is a fake Geordi, aside and asks him to figure out a way to regain control of the ship. So Barclay shows up at the holodeck and sets up some pattern enhancers around a holographic chair. So again, this is a fake holodeck within the fake holodeck world.
Yep.
The Countess and Moriarty watch with interest. They try to beam the chair away, but alas, the experiment is a failure. Data gets to work reviewing the transporter logs, but confusingly, he finds them blank. In engineering, Geordi thinks he's found a way for Picard to reset his password and get control of the ship. However, this also does not work. So, once again, this whole thing was just a huge phishing thing, and now Picard has given Geordi his password to the real ship. Data arrives just in time to notice Geordi using his pad with his left hand. So he does the old box of matches trick, and sure enough, Geordi catches with his wrong hand. So Data immediately deduces what happened. Moriarty never left the holodeck, and neither did Data, the captain, or Barclay. Instead, Moriarty simply extended the program to include a simulated ship. Unfortunately, the password reset attempted by Picard moments earlier gave Moriarty access to the real command codes for the Enterprise, which Data surmises he will use to hold the real Enterprise hostage. And they just discuss this whole thing while, like, Geordi is just standing there being like, doesn't look like anything to me.
Yeah, and then they ask Geordi to leave after revealing that he's some sort of hologram, and he's just like, all right, and he gets up and walks around a corner and vanishes.
Yep, Geordi, just the whole time, Geordi's just standing there being like, huh, interesting, I'm not real, okay. Which I would have made him leave before that whole conversation, because I would assume that that Moriarty is listening at all times, especially through the ears of, like, fake Geordi, who he used for the whole password reset ruse. But whatever. Indeed, what Data said is exactly what happens. Moriarty calls Riker on the real bridge, so he calls the real Riker on the real bridge, while the real Geordi looks on, and lays out his demands for them to find a way for him to leave the holodeck. He catches Riker and Geordi up with the transporter trick that Data came up with in the fake world. Unfortunately, they are also too close to the planetary collision, it seems, and also Moriarty has figured out how to sabotage the warp core.
Well, I mean, he just got control of the ship with those Picard command codes.
So. Sure, but, like, you know,
it's just like, I'm gonna use this dial that, like, turns up warp core temperature.
Yeah, I guess he could have been like, I don't know, he found some command in the system that turns up the warp core or something. It's just kind of like advanced for a man who supposedly has a 19th century knowledge of science and technology.
Yeah, I mean, we start out with him being like, what sea are we sailing?
Yeah. But maybe he's a fast learner. Who knows?
Yeah.
So Picard shows up to 221B in the fake holodeck in the fake Enterprise and meets with the Countess privately. He explains a method he says they think will allow the transporter trick to work. And he just tells her the whole method, but asks that the Countess get Moriarty to release the ship, or else he won't do it. However, the treacherous Moriarty just calls up Riker and explains the new method to him. And so this Riker he calls up is now a fake Riker.
Yes, it's yet another fake.
Right. Because now did they do it on a different holodeck or the same holodeck? I couldn't quite see the holodeck number of the holodeck.
I assume it must have been a different holodeck within the fake Enterprise. Because,
okay, so they went to another holodeck.
221B is running consistently.
That's true. Okay, so they went to another holodeck. They created another fake Enterprise, including another fake Riker, and got somehow routed Moriarty's calls to that fake Enterprise. Yep. Okay. Incredibly, the new transporter method works, and Moriarty and the Countess are successfully transported out of what they think is the holodeck, or what is the holodeck, but they're transported onto another holodeck.
Yep.
So Moriarty talks to what he thinks is the real Commander Riker, but is really a 2 levels deep fake Commander Riker.
Yep.
Riker demands that he release the ship, but Moriarty first demands a shuttlecraft to escape on. Riker agrees, and Moriarty and the Countess set off on their new lives. The instant Moriarty sends the command codes, Picard strolls into the shuttle bay and ends the holodeck program, showing that what Moriarty thought was real was actually a nested holodeck program within his overall holodeck program.
Yep.
Then Picard uses his newly reinstated command codes to regain control of the computer and end the main holodeck program. So Barclay is following this whole thing through in his head, and he confirms that everyone should now be in the real world, except for Moriarty and the Countess, who are in a little green glass cube thing.
That we've never seen before, but I guess was there the whole time, because there was no way for them to shove the little green cube into the real holodeck to capture them. because they couldn't access the real holodeck.
Because the holodeck they were on was a fake holodeck within the fake Enterprise.
So that the cube was there the whole time, and I guess there's just always a cube thing.
Sure. I'm willing to allow it. Barclay puts the cube in a little doodad that will supposedly allow Moriarty and the Countess to spend a lifetime exploring the simulated galaxy to their heart's content, as long as nobody loses or breaks that device.
Yeah, it makes you wonder where that thing ended up.
Yeah. I assume it's been on, like, Barclay's shelf at home the whole time, and he forgot about it.
Yeah, I was like, was it in the like Picard's ready room, and then the Enterprise D gets crashed by Troy, and it gets destroyed, or what's going on?
It's smashed to pieces on Viridian 3 for sure.
That's unfortunate.
Unless we learn otherwise in the new season of Picard. So Picard lightheartedly muses that maybe their whole reality is some kind of simulation in a box on someone's table. All laugh and get back to work except Barclay, who is in a state of deep existential panic. The end.
Yep. Well, it's a good joke because they're a TV show and everything.
They're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek. So you say there's a book continuing.
So there's not a book, exactly.
Okay.
What there is on the Star Trek website, there's a thing called The Path to 2409, because the game Star Trek Online takes place or starts in 2409.
Ah, okay.
And so there's a timeline outlined on this website of what happens between like 2379 and 2409.
Oh, okay.
And among the things that happens in there is that, like, in 2393, the Sung Foundation learns of Moriarty's existence and then sues to take custody of the holographic program, while Starfleet attorneys argue that there are security issues to doing that.
Why? Does Moriarty know state secrets or something?
That's a good question. But apparently the Sung Foundation is dedicated to the promotion of the rights of artificial life forms.
Sure. It seems like this is definitely the type of thing that the Doctor would be interested in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or whatever. Didn't the Doctor give himself a name at some point?
I don't remember.
Like,
I feel like there was an episode where he tried and it didn't stick or something.
Steve Jones or I don't know. But it doesn't say what happened to him after that, just that they acquired him.
Yeah, I don't see any other beyond this lawsuit.
I see. This does kind of remind me also of the book. You ever read the book Red Shirts?
No.
Which is a very amusing book. So it's a book about basically like, minor crew members on a starship.
Yeah.
Who it's kind of like Lower Decks, but they figure out that they're in a like poorly written sci-fi TV show.
Okay.
And they also like realize that the writers of the TV show hate or just love killing off like, red shirts. So they have to find a way to get a message to the writers of the show to stop killing the red shirts because they're real people with like real lives. I don't know. For some reason this reminded me of that.
I can see that.
Yeah. Even though that wasn't a holodeck simulation. They just became real by virtue of them being in a TV show or something somehow.
Who knows how artificial life starts?
Yep. Where does consciousness come from?
Not people in this show, clearly. So to get more into the technical aspect than I probably should.
Sure.
There's really... They really play fast and loose with holodeck rules.
Uh-huh.
And when you look at how the tech works, like holodecks and transporters and replicators in this universe really function on a lot of the same principles.
Sure.
And we've seen objects like come out of the holodeck before that were created by the holodeck. Like, there's like a snowball in one episode. In Elementary Dear Data, like there's a drawing of the Enterprise that they actually, like, Moriarty draws it and they bring it off the holodeck. And so there's like a just accepted thing that, like, so some stuff the holodeck replicates. Some stuff is actually real stuff, and it's just like it works like a replicator and just makes it. In which case, like, transporting a chair off the holodeck really shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking along similar lines, like, because it seems like if everything's digital, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how computers work in the 24th century, but if everything's digital, it seems like there should be a way to like convert the holodeck file for that chair into a file for like a transporter or a replicator.
Yeah.
And create it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, the transporter, all it is like it gets an exact blueprint of the thing that it's transporting, and then it builds it out of molecules. So there's no reason that a chair or even like one of these people shouldn't be able to do that. I mean, you get like they say, there's like some very strong moral implications to creating fake person on holodeck and then beaming them off into real person.
Uh-huh.
But technically, I don't think it should be as much of a problem as they make it out to be.
So the thing is, I always assume like holodeck characters they're basically like a wireframe made out of a force field.
Yeah, and that is force fields and stuff, or that gets mentioned.
Like, maybe if you need to like for some reason like cut into a holodeck person, then it goes into a program that shows you exactly what you need to see or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like I assume that the holodeck characters are driven by like routines in the computer, not in a simulated brain inside the holodeck character.
Yeah.
So if they beamed the holodeck character off the holodeck, like there would be nothing guiding it anymore. It would just it could just be like a lump of dead meat or something.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah. So, but again, we don't know. I mean, yeah, It's
just the premise of the episode. I feel like there's a lot of technical components that don't make the sense that they're trying to build up. But that aside, pretty solid episode.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
There's apparently it took them this long to revisit the Sherlock Holmes thing because there was a legal dispute between Paramount and the estate of Arthur Conan Doyle over the film Young Sherlock Holmes.
Huh.
And so they're like, oh, we can't do like anything Sherlock Holmes after this. And then when this idea comes out, it says that Jerry Taylor decides to reinvestigate and finds out that actually everything that they'd heard, like the whole situation with Star Trek and Sherlock Holmes, it had just been a big misunderstanding that they weren't allowed to do this. Huh. And the estate was actually willing to license the character for a very reasonable licensing fee. Huh. And so they're like, okay, well, yeah, we'll do that then.
I would have just assumed Sherlock Holmes was in the public domain, but
no, that was more recent, and there's still a thing. I don't know if you remember, but just a couple of years ago, there was a whole thing where it's like some Sherlock Holmes was in the public domain, but there was an argument that like some depiction of Sherlock Holmes they were trying to say was not allowable under the public domain rights because it used stuff supposedly from the later Sherlock Holmes stuff that wasn't in the public domain. But they were trying to argue that it was like Sherlock Holmes having emotions was from the later stuff, and so you could not portray that or something. It was a ridiculous claim. But I just remember that it brought to light that like some of the stuff was in the public domain, but some of it was not.
Sure. I know that the 20-year freeze ended just a couple of years ago on like all copyrights in America. I don't know. Copyright is very weird. Yeah. Like just like the whole thing with like Never Say Never Again, where a guy who was like the co-writer on Thunderball gained the rights to that script to remake, so he was able to remake a James Bond movie as long as it was a remake of that movie or whatever.
Yeah, I was just reading about that the other day, actually, where it was like, and even the title is a joke because like Sean Connery had said if somebody asked him if he was going to play James Bond, and he goes, "Never again."
Yep, never say never again.
Yeah.
Not only are you going to play James Bond, you're going to remake a movie that you already made. I mean, it seems kind of pointless to like rate this episode.
It's a solid episode of The Next Generation.
Sure.
I would rate it really highly, but I agree that like it doesn't. I mean, we're not fitting it into any structure that we're rating. So.
Yeah, we're not comparing it to anything, but yes, it's a very good. I think I liked it more on this watching than I've ever liked it before, actually. Because the thing about it is, I sometimes get annoyed by it because it seems like, when you're watching reruns on TNT or something.
Yeah.
It feels like they've rerun this episode so many times. And so I've just seen it so many times on reruns and stuff. Oh, and also on Paramount Plus, like just the beautiful HD remaster.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so nice. After watching all those Deep Space Nines.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the Blu-rays of the HD remaster, so even before it was on Paramount Plus, it's just it is very worth watching that quality for sure.
As opposed to like when you're watching Deep Space Nine, and it looks like there's always like, fog on the camera or something. It just looks really just really low res. So maybe that also put me in a good mood, but. Because, I was also watching it with a really careful eye to, what's really going on. It's like really actually very well crafted.
Yeah.
With what's going on. There's no I think we watch a lot of episodes where clearly the writers don't care.
Yeah, that seems to have happened.
I don't know. There's a lot of very good craft in this episode and really well done.
Yep. I like, They really did a good job all around. I agree, and even Barclay, he's fun. It's hard not to be amused by Barclay.
Sure, and this was the right little pinch of Barclay.
Yep.
Where it's just like his funny little character traits kind of add a little bit of comedic spice to the episode. I like the moment at the end where he's like, computer in program.
And it's funny because they mention in the wiki, it was like Barclay was added to the story later on because it was when it was decided that they needed a character who didn't know about the first Moriarty thing.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
And then they're like, well, later that became kind of a moot point. And so there was kind of like, should we keep Barclay or not? But Echevarria notes that no one but Barclay could have made the episode's final line work.
Nice. Yeah, that's true. He was the right character. Although you could argue that maybe with all of Barclay's weird obsessions with the holodeck, he should have heard about this at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that should be a story like that's making the rounds of like the Enterprise forever. It's like, oh man, did you know this one time like a hologram came to life and nearly destroyed the ship?
Well, because you'd think just characters would be sitting around talking about like all the time the holodeck went haywire.
Yep.
And it would always end with like, remember the time Moriarty literally came to life and then took over the... Yeah. But yeah, who knows?
They tried to recreate the 221B from the original episode as faithfully as possible, but apparently the wallpaper they'd used had been discontinued since then, so they had to be a different wallpaper.
They didn't have any spare laying around?
I guess not. I mean, it's 4 years later or something. So, and then there's an interesting note in here about Regina Bartholomew, where it says her casting was the most difficult because we needed someone who could pull off an English accent and had a regal appearance, but who was also very sexy in Victorian clothes. And I read that, and I went back and looked at the episode, and I'm like, I don't get that exactly. But okay, whatever you say.
All, who's sexy in Victorian clothes?
Right?
It's like you can see their hands and their face. So that's about it.
It's like, oh my gosh, I see her wrists, so hot.
I like this. I like the story she told about the time she got to like wear trousers the whole time.
Yep.
I was like, ha ha ha. Anyway, so how will this play into Star Trek Picard? Were we on the holodeck the whole time?
If it turns out that we've been on the holodeck for like 30 years, I'm going to be really mad, actually.
Like, Moriarty countered with another layer of reality, and...
It's like, we cut to, like, these guys have been working on trying to somehow get them out of the holodeck all these years, Like they've been like in a research lab at Starfleet for this whole time.
It's like he went back in time to the 2024 and
yep. The Borg Queen, stuff happened and
yep. He met all these new characters who I guess just aren't real people. Like, people who weren't born yet at the time that this Moriarty incident happened.
Yeah, it'd be an impressive commitment to the bit.
Yep. I will be almost amused if that happens. Or maybe they'll just find Moriarty and bring him back to life or something. I don't know.
It's like, we're going to take the android rights things from the previous, from season 1 that you really didn't get to experience, and the Doctor's going to show up and we're going to have like some debate over artificial life rights.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to see the Doctor. That would be a cool cameo.
I mean, really, it's funny because the Doctor, just a few years after this, gets like the portable hologram generator thing that would have completely solved this problem.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, at that point, it's like, do you go in there and tell them, it's like, you've been living for years in a fake universe?
Yeah, probably not.
But now would you like to come out into the real universe?
You'd just be pissed off.
Yeah. So, yep. Good episode of Next Gen. Looking forward to Picard, which will start next Monday, if you're listening to this.
Mm-hmm. I'm listening to this.
Or our reviews will be starting next Monday.
Yeah. Picard comes out on Thursday.
Where and when you watch it is up to you.
I looked up Alexander Singer to see if he was related to any celebrities. He was a high school friend of Stanley Kubrick and helped him like...
Oh, wow. So he's like an OG.
Yeah, it says that he began his career behind the camera as cinematographer on the short documentary Day of the Fight, directed by his high school friend Stanley Kubrick.
Like, Stanley Kubrick was making... Or he was I think he was like a photographer or something before he was a filmmaker, but he was like working in like the 40s and stuff, wasn't he? Like, that would make Alexander Singer pretty old.
Yeah, working as a photographer for Look magazine in the late 40s and early 50s.
Oh, wow. So
it was Stanley Kubrick, so yeah.
Yeah, I guess Alexander Singer is like an old pro.
Yeah, born 1928.
Oh, wow. He's
died 2020, so he lived a good long while.
92 years old. Not bad. All right, so ready to wrap up then?
Yep.
No connection to Bryan Singer found?
No, not that I could find.
Oh, well. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed our discussion, you may be interested in our episode-by-episode retrospective podcast of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which we call Undeclared Bajor, available on this channel or on whatever platform you may be listening on, if you're listening in the future. Check out the description. I occasionally put links to interesting things in there. That's also where you can find a link to Data's other podcast, The Sanderlanche, which, do you want to pitch that real fast?
I mean, if you like reading Brandon Sanderson books, then that's the pitch. So,
if you like Brandon Sanderson, you will like this podcast.
Exactly.
So go check that out. Anyway, I was Fletcher. About to say goodbye is Data.
Adios.
And this is the part where we will put our sign off, but I think we need to watch an episode of Picard before we come up with that.
Yep.
Let's just say...
remember, everybody, resistance is a measure of the opposition to current flow in an electrical circuit.